Well, hello, we're going to welcome everybody out to the Medical Cannabis Policy Advisory Board. Today's February 17th, 2026. We're going to start with the intro script. This meeting is being held virtually and in person and is hosted by the Utah Department of Health and Human Services in Salt Lake City. Public notice of this meeting was provided on the Utah Public Notice website. This meeting is being recorded. A recording of this meeting will be posted to the Utah Public Notice website no later than 3 business days following the date of this meeting. Every proposed agenda item must have the summary of the topic submitted no later than 7 days prior to the board meeting. Board members will present and discuss the summary. If no written summary is provided to the board staff, the relevant agenda item will be removed from the agenda. The items that have been submitted in writing in advance of board meetings will be allowed during discussion by the board chair. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. If you want more time, you may request it from the chair. Please state your name and your affiliation. Only comments made on items listed on the agenda will be considered. To make a comment over Zoom, when the chair opens public comment, use the raise hand icon on Zoom to indicate that you would like to make a comment. When you are called on, you will be taken off of mute. Take 2 minutes to make your comment. How to make a comment in person. Sign the public comment sign-in sheet with your name and indicate what agenda item you would want to make a comment on. The chair will indicate when it is time for the public comment and invite you to the table. Take 2 minutes to make your comment. For additional information and to make suggestions for agenda items, or to contact the board members or staff, send an email to dlbcboards@utah.gov. And with that, we will move on to agenda item number 2, just the approval of the January 2026 minutes. Has everybody got an opportunity to read those and review them? Yes, we'll move to approve those minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Everybody, all in favor of approval of the January 2026 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, administrative business today. I think all we have is that at 4 o'clock, we do have, SB 121, medical cannabis program amendments. It's kind of our big Christmas tree bill is in committee. And so, no rush, but if we, if we could make it there, I would like to be there. I know a couple of us, need to be there. So, with focus on what we need to get done today here, if we can do both, that would be fantastic. I just want everybody to kind of understand that that's, it's 4th on the agenda, so we could be a little after 4. But that is something that most of the people on this board also have going on today. So, with that, does anybody else have any business that they have? This has been kind of a crazy time for all of us. So, with that, then I will move to agenda item number 4 with the DHHS and UDAP updates.
Yeah, I can be brief. We just have an announcement that DHHS is accepting applications to fill the medical provider vacancy on the Medical Cannabis Policy Advisory Board until Friday, February 27th. And we sent an email to all of the recommending medical providers who have recommended to over 100 patients to let them know about this opening in case they're interested. And we've received 9 applications so far. And if anybody's interested, they can visit boards.utah.gov. And that's a website that is overseen by the governor's office. And that is also where we direct everyone who is interested in applying to fill a vacancy on this board. So we did notify the Utah Medical Association, the Utah Osteopathic Medicine Association, the Ogden Surgical Medical Society, Utah Nurse Practitioners, Utah Academy of Family Practitioners about this vacancy. And so they're welcome to also forward that notice to their members to let them know. That is happening. And if you know of anyone that you think may be interested, just keep in mind that there is the requirement that they have recommended to at least 100 patients already in the program in the past. Also, we have a new online training course for recommending medical provider proxies, and but it won't be launched until later on. So currently, an RMP proxy, this is someone who works at a medical clinic and provides assistance to one of the medical providers who participates in our program. And they have access to a lot of confidential private medical information that is stored in the electronic verification system, as we call it, the EBS. There is a law that requires that they do some training. And currently, the way we require that training is we have a handout that is within the application. When they apply and reapply for that designation in our program, they would review that handout. So we're transitioning from a handout beginning on March 2nd. We'll transition from the handout to an actual online course that they will complete. And there's just a brief quiz at the end. And so as long as they take that course and pass the brief quiz, then they can say to themselves, having completed the training course. So, and it's free. They won't have to pay any money to take it. And so, again, that'll begin on March 2nd, 2026. Any individual applying for a new proxy or renewing their proxy designation, they must complete that course. And so it won't be everybody at once takes it. It'll be just when their card for a proxy is about to expire, they'll be notified and they go in and complete the application. And then there'll be a link to this online course that they have to take.
Great.
And again, they won't be required to pay an additional fee or anything. It's just, we've created the course to make it so it's just verifying that they actually know some things about privacy as they access all this information. So, and so if someone is a current proxy right now and they're wondering, well, why am I not having to take the course right now? It's because their renewal hasn't come up yet.
Okay.
So it'll take time to about 2 years for everybody to be required to do it, but eventually everybody will complete it, this new course. Also, we are having Dr. Matt McKiff as our physician contractor present at the Utah Osteopathic Medicine Association Winter CME Conference on February 27. That's being held in Ivins, Utah. And so he was invited to be a part of that, and he'll be able to share information about best practices and treatment of patients using medical cannabis, that conference. Some general statistics is as of January 31, 2026, there are 108,879 active medical cannabis patient card holders. That's an increase from 989 from the month before. And then as of January 31, 2026, there are 1,039 recommending medical providers who participate in our program using the EBS system. And then beyond that, there's 182 that are like the limited medical provider who does not use the EBS, but who has a patient who they recommended using the paper-only avenue. Also, there's 93 pharmacy medical providers as of the end of January participating in our program who work at the medical cannabis pharmacy locations. Are there any questions? Okay, that's all.
All right, not much for you, Jeff, other than we have the EBS project ongoing at the moment. During the industry demos that were supposed to be taking place over the past 2 weeks, some issues were identified. They're being resolved rather quickly, but we're still worried about the timeline slipping a bit. We're going to be making a call towards the end of this week, beginning of next week, as to whether that will actually cause a delay. And we'll get out to you where we realize that this is starting to encroach upon 420 for the go live.
Yep.
And so if we do delay, we'll likely be delaying to after 420, not because it's necessary, but to not interrupt this holiday of sorts.
The one and only.
I would probably phrase it as an opportunity for patients to go and get great access with great products
They
at a
do
reasonable
get-
price during
They
4
can get great prices during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that, so,
All right.
That's appreciated though, because
Yeah.
it's extremely disruptive. Every time we hit a roadblock with EVS, it's hard.
Yeah.
It hits the industry hard.
We definitely don't want to interfere with patient access. It is a big
Yeah.
sales day for a reason, and so we don't want to harm access at all.
but
Yeah.
if we wait till, if this happens and we wait till after, April, then assuming it would go live May, easy.
I wouldn't say easy.
Yeah.
It'd be easy for me, like,
Yeah, you probably won't.
I,
None of this will be easy.
it's not gonna bother me much. Thank goodness, that's not one thing I have to have a say in, but, the next agenda items are bills that that I hope to just have good discussion on. We've talked about some of them before, things have changed, in some of them. So kind of want to just open up these next agenda items to just good discussion. I'll start just defining the bills and then I would really love to hear you guys' input and what you think, where we can best represent the wants of this board in these different pieces of legislation. So, and Trevor has been awesome. He sent these out that have, the bills in them, but then he just did one as of today, and that's this black and white one. So I'll be looking mostly at that one, but there's more information on the other ones. So the first one is HB 389. We're on the second substitute. And it has already passed the House. It only had one nay vote, which I thought was good.
House committee in the House.
Oh, sorry, yeah, the committee.
Yeah, that's the
sorry.
committee.
And so just the House committee. And so, all in all, it's, people seemed favorable of it. Not a lot of concerns. Telehealth was brought up, but it seemed to move through, they were able to have a conversation about it and everybody, like I said, only one nay vote. So, the changes that were done, I believe this is in the second sub. Okay, so on line 391, they changed the department to licensing board, which shall provide staff support to the medical cannabis policy board and assist the advisory board in conducting meetings. So, this would now go to the licensing board that will now be under ag, right? So, and in this bill, that's a lot of what it does is kind of shifts things over to ag. So, and I don't know what that's gonna look like, but it looks like that's the way things are going. Like I was telling a couple people this week, I don't really know if this is I don't have any reason to be, for it or against it, but it seems to be what's happening, and maybe we can have a discussion on that, but it's the way things are going. So if you have any say there, I would love to hear your perspective. On line 783, it adds a subsection 16. It says, except as required by this chapter to hold a public meeting or hearing, the licensing board is not subject to Title 52, Chapter 4, Open Public Meetings Act. This gives the Specialized Product Authority Licensing Board the ability to conduct private meetings unless required to conduct public meetings as authorized by the bill. So I thought this one was good because up until now, the licensing board can't really have even like a text message, right, between each other. And so there's just a lot of things that I've been on the board now for 60 days and there's no communication. So And not that we really do either, but I feel like we talk to Trevor enough that there's always,
So they can't even have communication with each other absent a quorum?
Yeah, correct.
It's more than that, no decisions can be made.
Well, of course, yeah. But like one-to-one board members can't communicate even short of a quorum?
No,
Which is often why they look like deer in headlights when they show up, because they've never even had a conversation with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they have no idea at all about even sometimes the agenda.
yeah. That's, yeah, so I think this will, for this, the new structure of this board, I think that it's going to be beneficial to industry. I also think it'll be better if they can, because like when we review licenses, you don't really know a lot about what you're reviewing, and I think this gives them the ability to really look at it and say, but why did this happen, and recognize, but this happened 2 months ago and it's happening again. So I think that's good. If anybody has anything to say about 389.
I'll just say having a professional board is a better way to go with this, just because they have actual responsibilities and they have accountability associated with that. And so having all of you show up, not being able to discuss anything with each other and having licensing questions come before you with no context, hearing from a potential license holder about what issues may or may not exist.
Right.
And then having ag try to be neutral in that entire process, because they can't communicate either, right, is sort of ludicrous. It makes no sense whatsoever. And it's no wonder that a lot of times there is no real scrutiny into those licenses, because it's the first time they've ever seen it.
Well, and
Was that legally mandated on them, or was that of their own doing? Is there a reason it's different for our board than it is for theirs? It's the same?
but they,
There's just not a lot of buying from that board. I mean, that's the thing, right? They're all have their own things going. They're definitely just like you all are all volunteers, but you all have, especially you and Blake and the pictures.
Yeah, to me, the professional nature of that board, I mean, obviously, ask me again when we see who the 3 members of the board are, and how they start to make decisions. But I think the fact that it's being professionalized is better, and nothing against the members of the board currently. They just have other things going on. And if it's something that I could, only had to pay attention to once a month and also can't have any discussions, at all about anything in terms of like decisions they're going to make. And I think that's now why I'm understanding. It's like they can't talk to each other about decisions they're going to make. Yeah, I think it'll be a good thing, but I think it also is probably tracking at some point in the direction of an independent agency like many states have created. I know a lot of states have gone through the experiments of having departments of agriculture and food or having departments of health and human services do these types of things. And I think a lot of them end up in independent agencies. And that's not to say that that's the absolute right answer, because I know having been exposed to some of those now, I'm sure some people wish that maybe it was, multi-agencies looking at it. But I also do applaud that part of the bill as well, to house it under one agency. To create, just to create one way of dealing with it and one way of thinking. We may not always agree, but having it under multiple different agencies, I think, was definitely not the answer. So to see it streamlined that way, and then to have the board have some form of oversight over all of that, I think is a step in the right, a step in the right direction for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah. I guess we're gonna find out really fast, but I'm feeling a little targeted, because it's like I got on the board and then it's like, hey, we should close this down.
I mean, I did hear that's the reason why.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I would like that to be on the record.
So just so you know, the new substitute that's on there for this particular bill, the individual that was against, who voted nay,
Mhm.
has offered an amendment that removes it basically enforces the right to work, that any of the individuals at the professional board can be fired at any time for any reason.
Okay,
And so that protection has been changed, and that no vote will probably shift to a yes vote based on that amendment. And I don't know,
but he doesn't really need to vote again
just on the
on the
floor,
floor, but,
just on the floor.
um, because I think that that was, I think that piece was, put in there because, let's say that it's Nanette and I and JD, and Cody wants to fire us because we're, doing whatever, like we, we're in opposition. I think it was to protect, you know how Cody is, like. It's to protect that they can do something opposite of Brandon and Cody and then not be held
Well,
accountable.
and ultimately Kelly, I believe, is the one who helps approve the people who are going to be
Yes.
on there, even though they're mandated out of the governor's office is my understanding, but it is a weird thing where if we have a problem with the citation and we go to the professional board to say that we disagree with how this is, and they actually agree with us, they're at odds with their own department that put them forward. And so, but at the end of the day, ag has been pretty good about addressing those issues, generally speaking. So I don't see that there should be any reason.
Right.
And look, we're in a right to work state regardless. So even though there are some protections that you can put in place, still you can be let go for pretty much anything at any time.
Just to clarify the structure for everybody, Kelly appoints the board, he's over the board, he's also over Amber Brown. He's over me and then Cody, so there will be somebody to adjudicate there at the top.
Right.
Yeah.
Potentially two individuals, both Cody and Amber.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Yeah.
I don't foresee a problem. I just know that I thought that one of the important things to the sponsor, but if everybody's worked it out, then I think they've come to a good place.
I mean, you can see how it would have a potential chilling effect, right? On
Yeah.
a board member, right? Knowing where they stand. So you can see the reason for the
I
language
do.
initially, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. But at the end of the day, look, anything that streamlines cannabis law to be more effective and efficient is ultimately probably better. Everybody in the whole entire nation has been struggling with their programs since their conception, and some states get further along, and then some end up getting too tired or war weary, and it starts to degrade. I am encouraged that Utah continues to work with like our board and others to try to improve the program, to keep it medical and to keep doing what we're supposed to be doing for our patients. So in that spirit, I support it. I think it's a good way to think about the system. So
Anybody else on 389? Substitute 2. Okay, then let's go to, and the next one is number 2, HB 281. That is the one that we talked the longest about last time. Sorry about that, but I think the sponsor is hold it. So
Entirely.
I received notice this morning.
Yes, I noticed it didn't make, it was all like, what, third on the agenda this morning and it wasn't heard?
yeah. So that I think, maybe we all meet with him this interim, and I understand Nanette and I had a good talk with him. I think I understand what he wants to do, and what in essence what we had talked about last year. I forget what month, but just talking about protections for private employers. And that's where his heart is on this. But how do you offer that protection without giving some kind of a number? And the problem with cannabis is there's no number that you can say.
Yeah, you follow what was already in the law for other controlled substances.
Yes.
My
And
recommendation.
so they want, yeah. So anyway, I think we could not get there with this one. And so, but I do want better protections for workforce.
at the end of the day, we should be willing to reach out and work with Walt, because Walt has been extremely helpful in making sure that our program is doing what it's intended to do and be a good, strong medical program. And so he has been good for the departments, for the industry, and for patients. And so,
Yeah.
look, if he just needs to have some help on some wording and so forth to get the thing he needs done, it's probably in our interest to make sure that he gets what he needs without sacrificing any of the concerns that we have.
Yeah. Representative Brooks has been on our side every single time patients need something. He's there and works hard for making sure that the program is, you know, it strikes that balance that we've all tried to, you know, public safety and patient access. And he's a huge ally there. So, I'm sad to see his vision die, but I think we can come back and make it something better next year. So
Without harming patients. I think if one patient would have been affected by this, it would have been drastic.
so that one, I mean, I don't know if anybody needs to talk about that.
Nope, it's dead.
It's dead.
It's dead, let it die.
So SB 121, that's what's on the agenda for today. It did pass out of the Senate. And it's got some good things in there too. This one's our other big one. Do you not have a 121 on here? There it is.
Some of that.
Are we calling this one the Christmas tree bill or Vickers the Christmas tree bill? We always have one we call that, and is Vickers and
That's
oh,
what-
sorry, I'm thinking Vickers and Brooks or Vickers and Daily program, so. Okay. So, so this one, it does create the patient voucher program. And it requires DHHS to contract with a nonprofit that provides assistance to purchasing cardholders and allows them to provide monthly vouchers of 150 to medical cannabis pharmacies to patients that have Medicaid or Medicare. It gives DHHS rulemaking authority and requires the nonprofit to follow the quarterly basis, like how the money was used and all of that. It removes the requirement that cardholders transport or publicly possess cannabis in an opaque bag or box. Thank you, JD.
That's not what
Was that not the one?
that's just to match it up, I believe, with other requirements, right? Because didn't they already do away, was it last year that they authorized patients to be able to bring their own opaque bag or box? So that does not make that change. It still requires it to be in an opaque bag or box. The pharmacy just doesn't have to provide it. So it
So it
doesn't
does
make the
not-
change that we wanted.
Well, then never mind. I will take my excitement right out of that line.
When I saw that, as I looked at it, I saw the sub and I was like, oh, because it said something, it says amends how they can
Yeah,
carry it while in public, but when you go read the actual language, it still says it has to be an opaque bag or box. Heaven forbid someone see the container that cannabis is carried in.
As an aside, the container that has the cannabis should also be opaque. Because
it
light is one of the things that degrades cannabinoids, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, dang it, I was excited about that too. I think I read it and I read what I wanted to read. It adds a tribal government issued ID to the government issued photo identifications that are allowed. It repeals background checks for caregivers and guardians, allows guardian card eligibility if the applicant is the legal guardian of an incapacitated adult, which again, I think this one is awesome. It broadens the remediation of the radiation to other methods. So, and I do have a question there. What other methods are we? Because,
Extraction.
so ethanol?
No, so basically, if you fail for, like, right now, the way it stands and the way that UDAF has written their rule to match what the way statute is, if you fail for microbials, the only way you can currently remediate the product is through irradiation. For a long time before the law changed, it was allowed to go through extraction because it does the same,
Yeah.
technically should do the same thing. Blake can obviously go into way deeper detail if you want to know, but I'll give you the short, version since we're trying to get out of here.
Saying is my version's not short.
Yeah, so no, this is gonna be elongated. So it would just allow the department to approve other ways to remediate, because as it stands right now, you just have to throw all of the
Yeah.
product away, even though it's been something that's been approved historically. So to me, it was just UDAF was aligning their rule with what was written in statute, and now statute is being aligned to what industry practice was and has been across the country. This is not something that Utah is going to be allowed to engage in that other states have not. It's a way to continue to be able to process it into further medicine as opposed to having to throw it away. But some operators may choose upon those failures to to destroy it as well. That's just kind of preference to the operator, but.
And it probably also depends on the type of failure.
Yep.
You know, the foreign matter, you probably just get rid of your stuff because how do you go in and refix that versus if it's a microbial issue, you can literally make sure you clean and kill all microbes.
Okay, so you two, is there any forms that we should be worried about being allowed? I mean, we had big discussions about radiation.
There's still concerns with it.
I mean, I think with the radiation, I think the department has required that it is included on the fact panel. Look for the Radura symbol, look for the fact that it's irradiated, do your homework on irradiated. And I think you as a patient will have to decide what products you want to purchase or not, right? Just like you would with any other, like, do I want a distillate-based product? Do I want a live resin product? Do I want a live rosin product? This is, I think, is just another factor to consider, but it is required to be disclosed on the fact panel, both, I think, in terms of wording as well as the Radura symbol. So it's clear if you pick up a product, you know, that it's been irradiated. And I think opinions abound on whether irradiation has any impact or none at all.
The biggest issue in the long run is making sure that it passes all the required testing from UDAF, because that is what ensures, quite frankly, that Utah has a lot of better products than a lot of the states that are out there. And so if you can find a way to make sure your material meets all the standards and requirements by UDAF, then there's some preference to JD's point that comes in. It might, well, yeah, it's clean and it meets the standard, but do I want an irradiated product or not? So, or irradiated product or not? I mean, so, but the point is, I don't have any issues, whatever method anyone uses, as long as it meets all the requirements that
At
you
the
have
end.
at the end.
That's good. Because that's what I was wondering, is there anything, is there,
I mean, that's the final check on all of it. If
Yep.
it passes state required testing, it can be on the shelves, and then at that point, it's just consumer preference beyond that. But there is a way for them to know for flour product if that product's been irradiated.
That's right.
okay. This allows you to have to make rules regulating terms on labels and describing potential psychological effects of medical cannabis. I guess that depends on how broad they want to go. You guys have any intentions we need to know about there?
So it's basically,
That's
so
the
you
safe
can just
answer.
use like,
Yeah,
that's basically, so you can use like descriptive terms for like possible effects, right?
like may cause drowsiness or like,
Well, a lot of the producers have like effects lines specifically, so
Sleep.
it's the ability to be able to make those statements without it being considered for purposes of Utah law, a medical claim.
Sleepy time.
Yeah,
gotcha.
that's all thing.
I
Okay,
mean, it's why you don't generally see medical cannabis producers make claims as it relates to specific disease states, right? You know what I mean? They say may help with sleep. Well, sleep is a general condition, not a
Right.
specific medical condition. So you can see that's why effects lines become why they kind of come into vogue, but also many patients, especially newer patients, are looking for that level of direction. They may not care as much as to what the strain name is or
The
what the terpenes are, those types of things. They may not be looking for that. They may be coming in saying, hey, I'm new and novice. This was recommended to me for pain, and part of my, one of my symptoms of pain is lack of sleep, trying to sleep better. It's just an easier way, I think, for the agents to be able to have conversations with patients. And it's a protection that's now being provided to producers to say, you can say these things without making a medical claim for purposes of Utah law.
yeah, I love that. In my mind, I had filed this in the way that they were going to be able to say, like, I thought warning statements, like, I was thinking it was more warnings about potential effects. So that's even better because so many patients do need to know this will help with pain.
Processors should be producing their products based on an idea or why they're producing a product for patients, right? And so this helps protect the processors to do so. The only sticky wicket in all that is if you have a processor that says, well, this, is going to help you do X. Well, that may not have been scientifically shown or valid on that. But I think this was not designed to show the science. This was designed to help the processor fulfill their intent in communication to the patient about the intent of the product.
Gotcha.
And ultimately, the patient still has the opportunity to try the medication, see if it works for them, if not.
That's
they
right.
try
It didn't
one.
work for the intended thing. No,
But at
that,
least they can find one that is targeted towards their condition, which is what our intent.
so are you gonna be like looking at terpenes at all and deciding, or is it just coming from processors?
That's really better left street. We don't want to get involved in that.
Yep. Let's check in. This changes the licensing board ownership request change from 30 to 60 days. I'm assuming that will stay with even the change of the licensing board.
It was really for the licensing board. That's good.
Okay. Good. It removes the need for the Division of Finance to approve payment providers used by cannabis licensees. And requires that a licensed pharmacy or courier delivery entity could use shipping containers that ensure product stability, potency, and correct temperatures. And tamper evidence security. It also allows them to allows them to have returns after 10 business days. It takes that from 10 to 14. So they have just a little bit longer to get it to the person. So does anybody have any? I mean, that's our big bill. So. Any discussion on that? Anything you're excited about? Anything you wish was in there or tweaks that need made?
I have a long wish list about a lot of things, but I'm happy with what this bill has.
In the beginning, we were always like, but this doesn't go far enough, and now we're like, oh, we'll work on it next year. Okay, so, and then 66 is just reestablishing those regions. Something that I think has to be done, that seems to be going through,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I have questions.
nobody, obviously that made sense. And is that the end of it?
Yep.
So. We can discuss, we can take a moment for public comment, we can. What do you guys, there's nothing else to discuss. I mean, do you have anything to say? Are you feeling good? What are the policemen feeling about these wonderful bills?
I don't feel like any of them really have a huge impact on anything law enforcement wise. I mean, my opinion of the bag thing, it sounds like now it's on the patient to bring a bag in order to consider.
Can be.
They can
Pharmacies
bring their own, or
provide
we
it.
still have to provide it.
Yeah, pharmacies are still gonna provide them
And then,
unless a patient brings one.
Yep.
Because patients are still required to carry it in. See, that was the whole problem. And there's potential criminal penalties that are associated with that. You can understand why that's a bit silly.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I get it when I go to Walgreens, they provide me with one, but if for some reason I decided to get my, ibuprofen 800 milligrams out of that bag, I wouldn't all of a sudden become a criminal, right? I think to me, it's one of those things that I get where it came from, but it never really had sense to begin with. It's almost like avert your eyes from this type of medicine, but any other type of medicine would be fine to carry it. Otherwise, I think that's where
law
where it came
enforcement, to me, whether you're carrying something in a typical orange prescription bottle, or whether you're carrying medical cannabis, the process for me is gonna be the same as if I believed or had reasonable suspicion or probable cause to stop you for said carrying. Verify that you're carrying it correctly, that it is yours, that you have your ID on you, and then you go on your way.
yeah,
To me, it seems, like you said, silly.
Well, and really medical cannabis can't ask for more than that. Treat it like anything else that you would encounter out in the world.
I wanted to ask, I know there were some of our recommendations that didn't make it into bills.
Yeah.
Were you able to at least have conversations about some of those things with lawmakers?
I met with everyone on the board except for Escamilla. She just has been super busy, and I gave them my lists, and I was told that they were gonna take it back and talk about some things. I had good discussions about like telehealth. We had, we had a lot of really good discussions on removing the conditions list, or not removing it, but adding sleep disturbances and adding a catch-all provision that said, let's, if a doctor wants to.
Well, I think what I believe will end up happening with that is this new way that they're going to
Yeah.
have that. And we recommended that they add the ability to apply, to add additional conditions and not just leave it with those two boards and whether or not they
Right.
get to it. So there's going to be a way for the public to apply to add conditions. And I think the way I see it going is if there is not meaningful work done, I think then it goes to the next step. And hopefully at some point we get to a place where we just let doctors be doctors and make recommendations based upon their own professional judgment. Cause it just seems, as I said before, somewhat arbitrary that you're saying a group of doctors can make this decision, but a single doctor who is of the same, basically the same authority as that group,
Yeah,
can't make that decision singularly. And look, I don't know if you all got a chance to see any of the data on the Cub. The problem was not the number of people that made it through the application process
Right.
and then were denied. It was the number of people that never even got to a decision.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, and
Completely
that's why I wanted that reported this year. That's why I asked for it last year, is because I was getting so many reports that this board's problem isn't that it's not approving people, it's that there's so many people that I like to call left on red, right? Like they're just sitting there. And parents that are currently treating their kids with cannabis from out of state that are, and this is the reality of it. I could probably name 10 of them right now. They're treating their children with
But don't do
product.
that.
I won't. But out of state, driving out of state, getting product out of state, breaking the law to give it to their child because they cannot get through the board. Not because they don't have a willing doctor, not because they don't have multiple willing doctors that are willing to say, hey, we will follow this patient. And they are now hiding it from their doctor, not able to get through the Cub. And so this is my problem with Cub. Now, when it came to conditions, I'm gonna be honest. I think we were gonna be fine as far as our board, the working group, the cannabis working group. They were all either neutral or willing to go allow like the catch-all condition and sleep in the catch-all condition. Everybody was, even Ray Ward was like, okay, I'll be neutral. And, but the compassionate use board, I think the general consensus was hell no. And so we need to maybe show that data better when it's not a session. Like, I think we got a little bit too late. We have it now, we can work during the interim. And it's not that I want this board to go away. I don't think it's necessary because we now have doctors willing to treat the patients, right? We have doctors that are willing to treat pediatric patients. For the people that don't, I think maybe the board is necessary. Maybe that's what we do for them, but seeing how many patients were left waiting and saying they were incomplete applications, and then talking to parents that are like, you don't understand, I've given them everything.
Right, yeah, or letters.
Though, just to somebody that doesn't have the experience with that board, like, what's the barrier? Like, why do they get
So-
left on red?
They've
So,
come back and said, we want more reports where they've had multiple doctors or letters.
yeah, or they want them to try, they're asking
Yeah, the
often to
Penton.
try multiple other medications, and the family's like, but hold on, like, I don't want to assume the risks of those medications. And they're like, well, then it's
We want you to
insufficient.
try this
You run
before
into an
cannabis.
issue when you're doing broad spectrum type stuff for like SSRIs in general. Okay, well, you got 50 drugs you can choose from. Okay, we want you to try all 50 first. Like it's sort of unreasonable and makes no sense, right? And so, depending on the conditions and how the doctors felt about it on the Cub would often leave people in limbo.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
I would just for record, Shannon Tobin Black. I don't talk a lot, but.
Here she.
So I do want to push back on that narrative just a little bit. I think some of that really was happening in the early days of the Cub. But as far as the asking for additional medications and push, but that has been statistically a lot less once the application makes it to the hub. I think what we identified in the last few months, based on this concern you guys raised, and frankly, it was a concern I had when I saw how many applications were being left on red, as the case may be. And what we have done, because there is a piece of this that, Center for Medical Cannabis holds to some of our staff. And so we have started putting in some more proactive measures, mirroring what we're doing in like Office of Licensing and Office of Background Processing, where we have a certain number of days and then we reach back out, and then we have another certain number of days and we reach back out to really help to try to coach both client and when we can get a hold of the medical providers on what that actually looks like, what those steps may be. Previous to this, we did a lot of this through email or written communication, and this will allow really some more coaching in multiple ways. And again, that's something we've implemented to really great success in Office of Licensing and Office of Background Processing as we start looking at things through. We always look at things through a customer service lens, but sometimes then we see there's particular processes we could do better. And so that is something we're implementing, and we are hoping in our next fiscal year that we'll have data that shows that that has helped to impact the number of applications getting in front of the hub if they do it.
So I appreciate everything you're saying, and actually it's the right way to think about all kinds of issues. When we see that there's an issue, we look at our own processes and see if we can help them. The things you're describing are qualitative things that will help, that will affect the quantitative later. But what was presented to us simply at the board was the numbers, and the numbers were very clear, and the numbers show there was a deficiency. And so I appreciate and applaud anything we're doing to move that forward and so forth. And I think you're right. In the early days, it was very different from the way it is now. However, we're still catching up from the early days. And so the numbers were where the numbers were. And so having us be slightly horrified by how many are left on red, I think is the appropriate response. But I look forward to seeing the data this year and the changes that are made.
Is
So-
there any way we could get it a little earlier than December? Probably not, because it's released in December.
So I think that for us, we can actually pull data. It doesn't always have to be that December, like, this is our standard report. And again, for a lot of our other providers through DLBC, we pull on a quarterly to help them kind of see where changes have come in. I think that that's definitely something, let's talk about what would make a realistic cadence. And when we could realistically see a catch up from those numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know if like next month, we
Right.
won't show anything, but maybe on a quarterly. So I think again, we are just because we are statutorily required to do something once a year, doesn't mean we can't.
Right.
Yeah,
I really love that. I love that a lot, because ultimately, how do you know that your fixes are doing anything unless you
Yes.
actually check in regularly anyway? Because what if you find that nothing has changed and then all of a sudden it's a new year again? Like that's a real hard way to do business. And so, yeah.
But yeah, maybe we could get, I don't know how this works, maybe we could get like just a report to us quarterly of just how they're doing, see what we can do, because until this is fixed,
It's gonna feel like a barrier,
And
and that's certainly not.
every month, these people, and we've already lost some of them to the other markets. I don't want them to get so comfortable with the products they're using out of state. Parents don't switch their kids. Once they found something that works, they will go out of state. And I want Utah patients using Utah product and just not taking those unnecessary risks. And I believe in the product and that it's tested well and created with great intent. And so, if we can hurry it along so we can get those patients in our market.
and
Right.
one thing I think is important to realize also is that there's a number of these applications where they simply do not submit additional documentation. There's some where they do, but there's a group of them where the reason why they were denied is because they did not submit additional. Now, there's reasons why they choose to do that, that could be very personal. And also it requires the support of their medical provider in providing that documentation. And that could be a barrier. maybe the medical provider didn't want to spend the time that's required to gather the documentation, but yeah, so anyway, there's certain documentation that the statute requires, and the board is operating in compliance with the statute, not making up requirements, but just applying the statute that requires that A, B, and C be provided. And when none of that is provided, it ties the hands of the board to
Well,
say.
one
hey,
thing that I think we always have to be very careful of is, I'm not denying anything that you're saying. You're probably 100% right. That's probably the case. How we meet someone where they're at and the intention of that is actually the purpose of these programs that people normally are struggling to get access to. Because when we say, look, statute says something and I can't do anything else, even if unintended, sounds like victim blaming. It sounds like you didn't do your end, so what do you want me to do? And look, again, very justifiably, there are individuals who may choose not to fulfill all the things required. But what is really important is seeing what the intent and how we meet people where they are.
Right.
And look, if somebody flat out says, I refuse to do what you've asked, or my doctor refuses, well, if the doctor refuses, there should be a path to help mediate that. And if the individual flat out says no, then it's pretty clear what that answer
Yeah,
is.
Right,
And I-
but that's not, go ahead.
What Shannon was describing earlier will help.
Yes,
The process of reaching out, connecting and over the phone with the applicant.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, I think all those cases are valid, but what I'm hearing from is people who are doing all the steps and still getting pushback and saying, I have 4 doctors at this point, but the Cub is saying, I need to go try one more med. One more med, one more med, and this has happened within the past 3 months. This is where I've given examples of it, so.
Will
I
you
get-
make sure you give them a,
Yes.
call me? And
Absolutely.
We can help see, because sometimes there
And
is
this
a
is-
perception that
Right.
doesn't match, but we can help navigate.
But I know that this is a doctor that's gotten other
Right.
approved, so they've gone through the Cub, they're
Yep.
very familiar with it, and they're still getting that pushback. So it doesn't have anything to do with the law. It's that this Cub is saying, we think this is better for the patient than what its doctors are saying, and they're wanting them to try other medications. I think that's where the
this is one of,
problem is lying a
Right,
little bit.
definitely have them reach out to me.
Yeah,
so
for
that
sure.
we can-
I think that's a great option. Like when we run into them, which we do, we'll send them that way
Yeah.
and just say, let's,
Because it's helpful for me to hear that and it's one of the purpose, obviously, you guys are here to advocate for patient advocate. But if I can talk to people one-on-one, I know they
Right,
can ask some
right.
questions that
Or-
maybe they may not have had information or know to tell you, and
yeah.
so
Absolutely.
I would love.
Yep.
You got it.
Yeah.
this is one of the things, to JD's point, and I think he's absolutely right on this. When a process is given and a doctor then makes a recommendation, and then a series or a group of doctors override the decision of the caretaker, is a very strange position, I think, for a lot of people to be in.
Yeah.
There are times and places where doctors will outrule each other. That happens in lots of cases. However, to put it, if we look at the numbers seem that is incongruent with what we would expect under other conditions, like somebody in rehab, for example, being denied certain types of opioids. That is a case where you should not give an opioid for that particular individual, but the numbers are too high right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing those numbers. The last thing that I think is that I wanted to just say about this, and it's also to one of JD's points, I'm really excited to be able to have doctors think about using cannabis for unique conditions that we don't yet have data on, and getting an opportunity to do research on a particular formulation for a particular condition that we don't currently have. That is a really cool thing. That, in fact, that may be the coolest thing that the medical cannabis, can provide, is that we don't know yet if this can be effective for this or not. And so a doctor who recommends it can go through that process and show that, and then a producer who can produce a specific formula for that is really cool. I don't know how the rules will work out with that, UDAF, but it's a cool opportunity. It's a cool opportunity for us to actually learn some things, because one of the biggest complaints I hear all the time is lack of data. Look, part of that's going away. There's lots of data about a lot of conditions now, but there are a lot of conditions that we have no data on. And so We don't know. We have no idea if it works or not.
Well, and again, I think we see how this works. It's part of why we recommended that they add the provision around allowing the public to apply to have conditions added to the list, not just leaving it up to the CUB. I've heard enough around this table to say it's not a good process for some. Maybe for some it is a good process, but it sounds like it's not a good process for others. And I understand the CUB, had its own misgivings about it. Maybe even DHHS had its own misgivings about getting rid of that part of the process. But again, I just go back to the whole fundamental concept of, are we treating cannabis like we're treating all other controlled substances? In this area, it would suggest no. But I also understand where that came from originally, because cannabis from a research perspective has not quite caught up to where some other medications are, and it doesn't have the oversight of the FDA, which we here in America believe to be kind of the gold standard for, when something should be allowed to be prescribed, right? So I get where it all came from, but again, people are being denied access, and I just think it's amazing. We trust these providers to recommend it to someone that's over 21 years of age, but someone who's under 21, we no longer trust them to do that. They have to go prove themselves in front of a panel of doctors. It just doesn't seem to make great sense to me. So I see why we made the decision we made, but also we got some incremental movement on it too. I think that's one thing that the more I've been involved in this, you have to realize it is about the battles and not the war every single time. You got to take what you can get. And so I think this is a way to say, hey, the public can now, apply to the CUB in conjunction with the new licensing board that's going to be a professional board to add additional qualifying conditions. If that proves to be unworkable and the CUB is a roadblock, or the new licensing board is a roadblock, and no conditions get added, and we're in the same position, as the session comes up next year and people have applied and you feel like those applications are being arbitrarily denied, well, then, you go the next, or take the next step. But to me, this is the first change that has made meaningfully around qualifying conditions. I understand that we added the acute pain.
Yeah.
But it's the most meaningful change that's happened too. So as much as I would love to have seen our recommendation accepted wholesale, this is at least a step in the right direction. This cracks the door open, and now we'll see if individual conditions can pass muster. And this is where the studies that you used to provide to the research and review board that, fell on deaf ears, according to what I've heard from you. Now, those can go in front of in front of the licensing board and the CUB as proof that maybe we should start adding individual conditions.
100%. And the opposite was also true. If we don't have a single person from the public request to have something for a condition,
We know our list is sufficient.
yeah,
Right?
that proves a point too.
Yep.
So
And to disagree with your point, this is the second most substantive change because we did add suppositories.
That's a form factor, not a qualification.
But to the program as a whole.
That's the most substantive change we made.
Everyone's just glad to not say suppositories again.
I can't, yeah, I just need to say it at least once a session. Thanks for letting me get that out of my system. But yeah, I did, in talking with the lawmakers, there was a lot of things that they were push and pull and willing to give. They did take a lot of our recommendations into consideration, but getting them into a bill is kind of a different ballgame, And so you'll see some of them are in there. I really feel like we had conditions, so I'm hoping that like we have support with the working group. I'm hoping that we're able to work these other avenues, and then I would really like to focus on working with the CUB, because to Blake's point, a lot of times doctors will disagree when you're working with a patient, or one will have an idea that the other one disapproves of, but that doesn't usually happen when it's not a doctor that knows the patient. These are doctors that don't know the patient, are able to stop the current physician from providing the care that they want to do. So I want to be very careful that if we're allowing that to happen, that it's only when it's necessary and
Well,
not just.
And I think just generally, like with our strategy around getting our recommendations into bills, I think we should think as a board how to do something maybe different than simply having Trevor send the recommendations to them, and how we approach it in terms of maybe certain people on the board are assigned certain things to go to
Yeah.
lawmakers and stuff. Just so we don't feel like we're waiting until November and then all of a sudden it's like, let's
Yeah.
go. We should probably be working that year round.
Perfect.
And in the, and then reporting back in meetings and spending time talking about, hey, I approached such and such lawmaker. I
Yeah.
did these things, I did these things and this is where I am with it. Because I think part of what it is we waited until we got most of our recommendations under our belt. And then it was like, all right, let's go. Or you totally forget that you made a recommendation 6 months ago that it's supposed to not be in an opaque bag or box while it's in public. And then you're like, well, there's bigger fish to fry at
It
this
feels like
point,
that in
I
the
mean,
session.
politically, right? So I think we should figure out a strategy to inform and interface with lawmakers like year round on
Yeah.
our things, like as we come out of meetings and make recommendations, as opposed to just sending a letter that says, here are our recommendations. Try to find a way to get maybe some FaceTime,
To
with
solidify
them.
those.
Mhm.
So
And maybe not just the board chair and vice chair. And if it's something that's more, it speaks to someone's expertise better than it does someone else's, because you learn a lot that how it's presented to them initially really, really matters. There's an issue we are currently working on that appears to be dead in the water because the way one lawmaker presented it to another,
Yep.
got immediate pushback. And it's like, yeah, but once you knew, if you would
Yeah.
have the right talking points, you know what I mean? So I think we should think about that and strategize about that, whether that's at the next meeting or some different time this year. I think that's part of it is our message has to get to them in a better way than simply sending a letter. I think that
And
we continue
stick,
to do
yeah.
that, but we got to think of ways because like you said, there's a difference in sending a recommendation and making a recommendation here and getting them to actually put that in
Yeah.
a bill.
We report to them like twice a year, right? And to the working group. And if you go back and watch the committees, they kind of divvy them up at that point. They kind of are like, okay, you liked that one. And they're like, let's plan on that. But then what I think hasn't happened is we hear that and we say, okay, they're taking care of it, but we need to actually follow through and make sure that they actually.
Well, and understanding there's people that are
Yeah.
on the other side of the issue that are like, oh, you made this recommendation. I mean, you just said one of them.
Yeah.
The group that we all as a board voted to say should be displaced clearly was opposed to it, right? So if they're going to be working on the opposing side of it, we need to follow up. And maybe that's all the more that it is as it gets kind of worked out amongst the working group members of who's going to kind of take the lead on that issue. Then we schedule some type of follow-up discussion or something with them to just keep it front of mind, because as you know, these cannabis issues, I think if you're not on it all the time, it's easy to forget, that, what the recommendations are. But I also think we have to think too, that not every recommendation we make is going to make it in a
Right.
bill, but also that should not stop us ever from making the recommendations that we see fit, as well. There should be no chilling effect on us just simply because something doesn't make it in legislation. If you've learned anything about cannabis, it's that you got to knock on the door a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna say, so I'm currently on about 9 boards. This is the only board that I'm on that doesn't have subcommittees where people are constantly working all year round and then giving reports to the board about the things that they work on for everything.
Mhm.
And so, because we lose efficiencies and in some ways, we suffer the same problem as the licensing board, in that we don't see each other except for, every month. And we've never talked about anything with anybody within the board during that period of time. Now, how we do all that, look, there's some legal implications. We got to figure out some things, but we should be having working groups everywhere. Because how else are you supposed to get your work done? I don't have any clue about how you're supposed to do work if you're not allowed to work. So, so that's something we should work on and how we think about making that
We've
happen.
talked about this before, but structuring them, how do we legally like structure
I don't think that's a
Then-
discussion today, but I think we need to get it sorted out.
I think we should put it on the agenda for next month. and I
Well,
think
that's
there's
our,
some
that's our number
reason
9.
To kind of give us the
What the
legal
framework doesn't look
like, this is what you can and can't do, and then we can decide, because we did set up some subcommittees, I think there was a pharmacy one, and then there was also a producer one, and just neither one of them have really gone, anywhere. But what I think we need to know is what can we as board members do and not do, you know what I mean, around those types of things and
Yep.
contact with each other and stuff like that. And then that can help us understand what type of subcommittees we can even form. I mean, I would think there would be a way that it, like, as the pharmacy representative, I could very easily meet with every, PIC and whatever. There'd be no problems with that, meeting with those people and discussing things. It sounds like the question is how much can we meet with one another and work on subcommittees together, right?
Right.
Okay, well, it's 3:07, so I think next, maybe I'll just, we've talked about all these bills, maybe I'll just open up to public comment really fast to see if
Yep.
anybody in the room or online has anything to add. You're welcome to speak to any of the bills that we've talked about. If you don't have a handout, I can help you navigate that a little bit. But if there's anybody in the room or online, or first in the room that would like to speak. And if not, then we will go online. Nobody? No, they're like, we've gotta go.
They're all picked up so much. I don't know if I'm gonna do it again.
Maybe you just cleared up everything.
Not likely,
Yeah.
not likely.
No, nobody online? Okay, well then, I think I'm gonna add, we're gonna talk about subcommittees for the next meeting's agenda. I'll talk to Trevor about that this week, and then if anybody else has anything else.
We should give a summation of what actually it passed and didn't pass.
Yeah. We'll give a session recap. And that shouldn't take very long because we've talked about each bill, I think, so
We should also have goals,
goals for the
Goals.
year.
goals that we're trying to accomplish this year.
Everybody,
And
yeah,
everybody should be.
Come with a
maybe we come with like a goal, like a 5-year plan.
Are we here for 5 years?
Well, just your
The program.
your term
Okay,
plan.
Maybe we'll do it smaller, 6-month plan.
Sure.
We at least need a year, Blake.
Okay, let's get a year plan, but we should have goals of what we're trying to work towards because that'll help inform our agendas. Sorry, I have a lot of opinions, but
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay, one thing that I would like from you maybe sometime this year, if anybody else in the board is interested. I've been interested from the beginning to see what this looks like, because we were just really careful when we allowed like the whole UCGIS and how the interaction with a patient when they get pulled over and how you pull that up and look at that. It doesn't have to be next month, but if the board has any interest, I would love to see the back end, to see what you guys see, how it works, and when you access it.
I
So,
already pulled that up and I had questions about, we don't need a case number when we do that, but I do need a case number when I pull up somebody's criminal history or their rap sheet.
okay,
And if I run them on triple I, which is the countrywide criminal history basis. And for anything else that we do with other prescriptions, I would have to write a warrant to doc.
okay,
So I'm just kidding, like, I'm not saying I necessarily have thoughts or opinions fully on that, I'm just saying like. It functions very differently than we do with anything else.
right. Do you want to add that on the tracker and it will be something we look at? Okay, well then, with that,
motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
all right, we're done.
I want you to have a gavel.